Well, here we are at long last. As promised, I have my full account of my 24 hours spent observing Kevin Trudeau. For those of you who don't know this channel or you're new to it, my name is David Krueger. I am a longtime associate of Kevin Trudeau, founder of the Global Information Network, author of Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About, elite insider, and generally very powerful and effective guy. He does a lot of training on success and how to create in the world, as he has created billions in sales in his various ventures over the last several decades and has connections and accomplishments that are very impressive. The proof is in the pudding. I have been a student and associate of Mr. Trudeau's directly for 5 years. I've been studying his material far longer than that. And I lived with him for 4 years. Observed him. Recently, I spent 24 hours in his house, specifically for the purpose of observing his habits, his success habits, his productivity. It's called a fly on the wall training, and it's something that Kevin offers. And I just did it a few weeks ago, and I wrote down copious notes while I was there. So the way I structured this is I went through my notes, I rewrote my notes to make them more clear. Then I sat there with an audio recorder and kind of read through my notes, talking through what I had experienced. And then I edited that audio and cleaned it up a bit, and I made a video out of it. And that's what I'm going to play for you right now. So you kind of get the raw, unadulterated observations that I gave. And this is the first video where I'm really revealing this. But in future videos, we're going to take apart different elements of the success system, different elements of what I observed from Kevin and continue to observe from Kevin. Success leaves clues. And one of the best things we can do is study successful people, not attempt to clone or be copies of successful people. This is something I've been learning recently. I've been doing a lot of studying of myself. What have I been using? Human design, the omnigram, which is something that Danielle Trudeau introduced me to, which is based on Chinese astrology. The purpose factor assessment. It's a great personality assessment that's out there. Taking all of these tests, studying all of these, and I just use Claude AI to do kind of an amalgam for me. And as I learn more and more about how I'm structured and how I'm set up, the less I feel the need to be exactly like Kevin, or anyone else for that matter. So many times we look at people like a Kevin Trudeau, or maybe a Gary Vaynerchuk, or maybe a Grant Cardone, or Tom Bilyeu, I'm thinking of all of these guys out there. Alex Hormozy, these very successful people that we feel like we want to be like, and we feel like we have to be just like them. It's not true. You have to be you, the best version of you, and you take these success traits and these habits that other people use and you incorporate them into your life. So I hope with that spirit you can learn something from what I'm going to share. So with that, here it is.
Hello, everyone. This is David Krueger, and herein lies my account of my 24-hour fly-on-the-wall training with Kevin Trudeau. A little bit of background for some of you who may not know me. Came on as Jin's first managing director back in 2021, and Kevin Trudeau and I, when he was coming out of federal custody, lived together. I lived with him for a total of 4 years. And when it came time for me to do a fly-on-the-wall training with Kevin, a part of me was thinking, what more is there to learn? I'm just going to be hanging out with my old roommate. And I will say that it was very eye-opening. And in this new unit of time, with me being a different new person and observing Kevin, truly observing Kevin, not just living with him, not just coexisting with him, but truly observing him for 24 hours was absolutely humbling and mind-blowing. And so I'm going to share a little bit of that with you right now. The reason I've chosen not to do this as a face video, as I do most of my videos, and I'm doing this as an audio, It's because I'm sitting here with the extensive notes that I took, and I'm going to be going through them, and I want to make sure I don't miss anything important. So I'm going to talk about what I observed, what I think it means, what it means to me, and what I learned from it. And I'm just going to start at the beginning. So myself and the other fly, a real nice guy, a real estate investor named Danny, we get to the house around 3 o'clock, and Saul gives us the tour of this beautiful home that I have seen before. And I was just looking at the meticulous detail with which everything was done. First, the place is beautifully appointed. You've heard many other fly on the walls talk about the luxurious appointments in the house, the gold trim, the beautiful bathrooms, the silverware, the gold silverware in all of the drawers. We explored in all of the bedrooms. I personally stayed in the Gary Spivey suite. And I remember just specifically, when we were downstairs looking at the water filtration system and the multiple sump pumps and the way this custom designed water system coming into the house and how beautifully, how clean and new and perfect everything was. And it was very much the way Kevin would design a thing. And I thought, how long has he been manifesting this? Just looking at this whole house. I mean, when he was down in my basement in a ranch house with a finished basement out of prison, down there with his priority manager working, he was creating all of this, what I'm seeing right now. So that was really something. So 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we get in the car with Kevin. Kevin comes to get us. He gets behind the wheel of the Rolls Royce, and Danny and I are in the back, and off we go. We're going back to the office where I actually work because Kevin is going to be filming a podcast episode. So he asks us, if we have any questions, tells us how it's going to go, how he's going to just kind of give us a running commentary. The rest of the time, he's just going to work, and we're going to sit there quietly. Asks us if we have any questions, and we said no. And he said, "Okay, great. From here on in, you're invisible." And there we were. We were invisible. We didn't say anything to him. He would give us running commentary at times. And I have to tell you, it was a little bit refreshing. I've spent a lot of time with Kevin where I had my own priority manager out and had to be ready to answer questions. And I was a little bit in my own head about what I was going to give him the right answer. And this was 24 hours of pure unadulterated observation, like a fly on the wall. So we got to the office, and the first thing, and this was a new thing, there was a big box of priority managers sitting there, and Kevin was very excited. These are new priority managers that are going to be offered by Gin. He was excited because he needed a new priority manager, needed some new stuff. And so that was very exciting to see, because the priority manager really became the theme of my 24 hours. Because the priority manager, I would come to find, watching Kevin, it is the manifestation tool. It is his secret wiffle dust. It's the priority manager. That's his Harry Potter wand. So we get into the studio, and Trey's ready for him. It's going to be an interview with a guy. A guy has a podcast called Travis Makes Money. This is something that John Denny arranged, and we're ready. The guy's going to send the interview link at 4 p.m. And Trey came out to explain to Kevin that he wasn't going to be able to see this guy, and Kevin had a lot of questions about it. He says, "Oh, well, why is that happening? What did you do?" And he wasn't grilling. Trey knows how to do his job, but I observed Kevin's curiosity. Kevin doesn't just take the answer that you give him. He wants to fully understand. He always tells us to fully understand things. And so he had Trey explain to him why he thought this piece of equipment wasn't working. It had overheated 45 minutes before, and so we weren't getting a video feed. And that was all fine, but it's just Kevin's curiosity. He likes to know the full answer of things. So this podcast host gets on, Travis, and he was late. He was supposed to send the link, and this guy most people are not punctual. Kevin, when Kevin has an appointment, he's ready to go 10 minutes early. This guy sent the link about 3 minutes after the hour, and Kevin had made a comment to Trey. He's like, "Look, next time we got to confirm with somebody 10 minutes ahead of time so we're not in this situation." So the interview begins, and Kevin's telling his story about, because this guy's podcast is about money and success, And Kevin is telling his story about how he got started. And I noticed something was very interesting. Kevin told his story a little differently, and he left out the brotherhood. He left out his uncle. He just talked about studying successful people. And I asked him about this later when we did our Q&A. And so you told your story a little different. He said, yeah, it's a new audience. You can't just throw that stuff on a fresh audience. Kevin's podcast and Kevin's material is public. I mean, you can go find that, but it's funny when you're talking to a specific audience, sometimes you need to modify the message a little bit so it's something that's more digestible for them. Another comment Kevin made on the podcast, he was talking about this guy, Travis, asked Kevin, when was the richest you ever felt? And Kevin in the training is always telling us that you set a chief aim, you make all this money, and now you've got the money and your lifestyle's changed, and you really shouldn't feel any different than you felt before. And I thought Kevin's answer to when he felt the richest was interesting, because the first time he went out and really made a lot of money was as a 15-year-old kid in a snowstorm. He offered to help this old woman. She was trying to shovel her snow. He says, ma'am, let me do that for you. And he shoveled her whole sidewalk in her driveway. And she gave him some money. And he said, no, you don't have to do that. It's not necessary. She said, no, son, I insist. And she put cash in his hand. And he got the bright idea. He said, ma'am, can I borrow your shovel? She said, sure. And so he went up and down the neighborhood, up and down the street, offering to shovel people's driveways and sidewalks. And he made more money in a weekend than his father made in a week. And he had all this cash in his hand because of his own industry. And he said that's the richest he ever felt in his life. Nothing ever felt better than being 15 years old with that wad of cash in his hand from shoveling snow. I thought that was very interesting. So he talked about in the podcast how to work for yourself to be financially independent. Horatio Alger tales, rags to riches, normal people, what they did, the business of their own. So it was really something. He just talked about Jim Rohn. He said the most powerful emotion is disgust. So Kevin's messaging is very, very congruent across multiple platforms. You got to get disgusted. Gratitude is important too, but it's only part of the story. It's only part of the recipe. And you have to follow the whole recipe. Manifestation is like making a souffle. You have to do the recipe in order. You can't just do one part of it. So on the ride home, we picked up Danielle. She was in the office, and just listening to them talk and the way they go about their day, it was interesting to see how successful, high-functioning, high-calibrating people are. The conversation went from tax implications of building an office building versus renting, talking to a builder who says that nobody's building now because there's a dearth of office space. He says, but other people are building. There's construction going up all over the place. Why are they building? That's Kevin with his questions again. Digging deeper, wanting to know the reason why. It's like, you can tell me, one source of information can tell me that, that it's not worth building, new construction now because there's a dearth of office space. Well, then why are builders building? Get that answered. So I thought that was very interesting. And he's sending messages to Billy Clark, the CEO of True Star Publishing. He's looking through his messages on Telegram. And he was in a conversation with Danielle, made a wrong turn, and they missed the turn, and we ended up having to kind of loop back around to go to the house. He said, well, look, this is a nice adventure. We get to go through a neighborhood I've never seen before. There was no frustration, no annoyance. He was just happy that we were driving through this beautiful neighborhood with beautiful homes for an extra 10 minutes. So this was interesting. We get home around 5 p.m. And of course, he has to make an emergency call back to the office because he left his priority manager in the studio. And Brian Coons had to run it over to the house really quick. But in that, because he literally could not, he needed it right away. And so in that 5 to 6 p.m. period before dinner, I watched him get more done than a lot of people do in an entire day. So we go sit in the smoking room, in the cigar lounge, which is his beautiful finished garage with industrial strength air filters operating out of they're not quite on the ceiling, but up on the wall near the ceiling. So this is quite the upgrade from what he had going on at our house before. And he has it in the Bentley, and the Mercedes are parked in there. And it's a 3-car garage. And then where the third car would go, Kevin has a nice card table and some chairs. And that's where he sits, smokes a cigar, and runs phone calls. And so in this 1 hour period, I'm not going to go through everything, but he had the priority manager out. He was leaving messages about buying a private jet. He was talking to the salesman. He wanted to get the pilot to fly it up so he could take a look at it. He was going over approving some things for Dustin, and it's not just approving a piece of copy or something, attributing sales to certain funnels, some high level stuff. Then he was just answering. Came back to Billy again about approving some layouts for some Guru Kev books and some others. What else was he doing? He was looking at all of these samples about gilded pages, and then he says, "I'm going to check my email." I checked my spam filters, checked his finances again. So he pulls his priority manager. So when the priority manager finally came, he pulls it out and he looks at me and the other fly and he says, "Tomorrow starts today," and he starts planning his day. So he's looking at what didn't get accomplished today, and he starts looking at his lists, and he says he has no A priorities tomorrow. So everything that he needs to get done, nothing has to be accomplished the next day, which he now he's giving us a running commentary, and he says this reduces stress and anxiety and runs down. So we're sitting at the dinner table, and he's just chatting with Danielle. And Danielle and Kevin are chatting about work. They are always talking about work and projects they're working on. And he's still, if he's thinking about something, he'll pick up his phone and send a message to somebody. And he explained to me later he does that because, first of all, it gets it off his to-do list. Now he's got the message out. And so if he and this other person have to have a meeting or a conversation about something later, now it's in the ether because now they're thinking about it. And that's a key energetic principle as well. Everything is done with paper and files and a priority manager. And the way he has his desk arranged, and I've seen this before, but I saw it again in a new unit of time and appreciated it in an all new way because I saw him pivot on his chair, have a thought, turn around, barely need to turn around, look at the file, grab it, and he could look at something. And so he was like an efficiency machine. His thoughts were clear, his movements were clear, and he was just getting things done, getting things checked off. And I just watched him get an enormous number of things done. And so I was beginning to see that this organization, this priority management system really is the magic with which Kevin gets things done so quickly. Because it's not just writing down to-do lists. It's not just being organized. It's organizing your thoughts to command the energy, to command the universe, to keep your thoughts clear. And so you're always creating with everything that you do. And so it's about 6:30 p.m. and we're done for the night. And now it's TV time. So we go into the downstairs, the theater. Kevin has a full-on, like a movie theater room in his house. And we're down there and we're watching. The first show we watched was Heart to Heart. It was this old 70s kind of detective comedy with Heart to Heart. This great show, this couple that solves crimes, and they're in love, and they're always flirting with each other, and there's no swearing. And he told me later that he likes to watch shows like that with Danielle because she's seeing a positive example of a married couple working together. And I thought that was really sweet. And even when they're watching TV, they're kind of just half watching it. They're kind of enjoying it, but it's kind of coming in. The conscious mind is just kind of enjoying it, and they're both on their phones, on Amazon, or just looking at things on ChatGTP. So there's kind of multiple things going on. And so, of course, between shows, Heart to Heart's done. So we go outside and we go back out to the smoking lounge. We have a smoke break. Priority manager comes right back out. And it's just like before dinner. Going through, he's putting things on his recorder. He carries if he has an idea and he wants to record it, he carries an old-fashioned tape recorder, like a little mini tape recorder. And he likes the tactile contact. He's never found a digital thing that can do it as well. Yeah, I mean, it was just, and he did leave a message for Andrew Melcher about maybe prototyping something for, if they can do it for $200,000, prototyping something like a digital recorder, like a tape recorder, but digitally, but something that like has more tactile buttons, so he literally has to invent something because nothing's quite good enough. And so Danielle came out and joined us after a few minutes and had her priority manager with her. And they started running down some business things. They talked about things like, doing level 8 training at the house, and just a few other things. And they discussed the design of the priority manager that Jen's going to be offering, which is going to be very exciting. And so, yeah. So that was day one, and then we watched then the second thing we watched was The Curse of Oak Island. It's a reality show that Kevin really likes, and they're looking for Oak Island is like up, I think, in Nova Scotia, Canada, and they're looking for like this buried treasure that the Freemasons put there in like the 1500s or something, and it's this, they just draw it out forever. They never find anything, but Kevin loves that kind of stuff. And then it was time to go to bed, and I kind of followed Kevin around right before he went to bed in this 10,000 square foot house he's living in. He went around all 3 floors of the house, and I followed him, turning off the lights and just being thankful and grateful. And kind of like, he didn't say anything out loud, but just kind of looking around and kind of addressing each room and being consciously thankful and grateful as he was shutting down the house for the night. And I guess I had seen him do that hundreds of times before in the little house we were living in. But I didn't see it that way. I just saw him as, going around shutting the lights off, because oftentimes when Kevin and I were living together, he would go to bed a little bit later than me. And so I didn't think anything of it. But yeah, I had a new appreciation for that. Moving on to day 2, Danielle came out first and said hi and showed me her new house robe, and I said, okay, I'm going to go back to ignoring you now. And when Kevin got up and just went and sat down on the couch, and, Kevin, for sure enough, first thing it's strange. He always tells people, you should read or listen to an audio when you first get up. Kevin's on his phone and he's checking his cash positions. The first thing he does, he gets his phone, he's in his banking apps, and he's looking at all of his cash positions. And in the morning, he's contracting the energy. He's looking at his cash positions and he's saying this. He says, it's got to be more. He's got to be bigger. So we get up and we're having coffee and breakfast. And they start chatting. And it's funny. He starts looking at the news. And they had an interesting conversation about why Dunkin' Donuts failed in India. He says Dunkin' Donuts, we opened up all these locations in India. They all shut down and nobody can understand what happened. He says, I can tell you what happened right now. People in India, it's an old-fashioned culture. They're used to eating real food. They reject not real food. Dunkin' Donuts is all crap. That's like false. It's processed food. And so these stupid companies have no idea. They take this brand and this product, and they just have no idea. And so he's just like, people just don't see. So we went down to his office around 8:15. He had 45 minutes before his appointment with himself at 9 o'clock. He makes an appointment with himself at 9 o'clock in the morning. And the appointment is to write the dream processes, which are going to be delivered at Dream Weekend in a few weeks. It's funny, I've learned to make appointments with myself. I'm making this recording and I'm writing this fly on the wall because of an appointment I made with myself earlier today. So he runs through his messages, his priority manager, and he gives us a bit of a running commentary as he's doing it. And just running through the business of the day. He's upset that Amazon didn't give us the contact information for people who bought the Your Wish Is Your Command book. He got a direct mail postcard that we sent out. He got one sent to him. He didn't like it. The color wasn't the same as the proof, and that's not going to be good enough, and it's just terrible. And so he's contracting energy all the time. And to someone who doesn't know Kevin or doesn't study what Kevin teaches, you might think this guy's just kind of a jerk and he's pissed off about everything all the time. But no, he's just making things the way he wants them to be. And a lot of times he does it by contracting energy. And I think looking back, that was one of the things I had a hard time getting used to with him, is I didn't understand the purpose of the contracting energy and the way it worked. I just thought he was mad all the time. And so that was a missed opportunity for me in the past. And it was neat to see it at my fly on the wall and to really understand that he is moving the energy literally all the time throughout his day. And that's how he manifests so fast when you pull back and look at it over months or even, years. So he contracts energy in the morning looking at his cash positions, and then he's thankful and grateful for them at night before he goes to bed. He literally, those are both the bookends of the creation algorithm, of the manifesting formula. He does them every day. The purpose of being organized, the purpose of the priority management system, and the purpose of keeping his files meticulous is to reduce stress and anxiety, reduce overwhelm, and never feel like anything has to be done right this instant. This magically frees up the energy and lets it flow and lets him be very, very focused. When he was writing the dream processes, I would see him just sit and focus on a computer screen for 30 straight minutes. And then he told me after that, you can't really go more than 30 minutes because your attention starts dropping off. He's well aware of his physical stamina, of anyone's physical stamina. And so he'll complete a cycle of action, check his messages, and he doesn't check his messages in the meantime. When he's in the middle of a half-hour cycle of action, that phone is turned face down. It's silent. He's not answering things. He's not looking at things. He doesn't have any dings going off. It is just a disciplined way of going through the day. And he optimizes it. He optimizes it with physical files, with tactile contact. He prints all of his emails that he needs to keep. And a lot of times somebody will be going through their email inbox trying to find an email from way back, and he'll say, well, hold on a second. He gets up from his desk, walks over to his file cabinet, pulls it out of that person's file, and has the thing. He's more efficient with paper than a lot of people are with digital. And I asked him, I said, so this priority manager, this is your magic tool, isn't it? He said, yes, it is. He said, this is the keys to the kingdom. This is how I use the energy. This is how he directs his mind. So when Kevin is teaching us the priority management system, do it like your life depends on it. So many people in gin and otherwise hear him talk about the priority manager, and they don't get we even have successful people who've had some measure of success who just can't seem to, get it together with the priority manager. It's not just for managing your business, it's for managing your life. You manage your whole life with it. It reduces stress, it reduces anxiety. Your mind isn't always racing with what has to be done because you've written it down, and there's a whole procedure on how to properly use a priority manager, and that training is coming. But that was really, really powerful. I asked him about the way he tells his story, and that was powerful. It was a very powerful experience watching how organized he is and how he gets things done. I think that so many times we get in our heads that if we just have the magic vibration, if we just get it, we can just sit and meditate and all of the wealth and things are going to manifest, and I'm putting manifest in quotes, manifest in our lives. And it doesn't quite work that way. Kevin lately on his Limitless show, and even in some of the trainings that I've been seeing coming out, I think of the last partner call, he's been kind of warning people about the word manifest. It's not really a good word to use. He would talk in the Brotherhood in the 70s when he was being trained. They wouldn't use the word manifest. They would say it was setting goals and getting them done, which is really what it is. And yes, when you direct your mind and you direct your action and you're clear about what you want, you're using the priority manager system, you are going to quote unquote manifest, because the energy is going to be lined up. And when you are taking direct action toward what you are trying to do, and you're doing it with clarity, intention, and certainty, that's when the universe stands up and realizes you're serious and does it for you. I am unbelievably grateful to Kevin for providing me with this opportunity to do my fly on the wall, to come into his home for 24 hours and observe success, observe what a winner does, observe what someone who creates billions in sales does. It really was a privilege. And for me, it was a little extra because I saw so many things that I took for granted or didn't quite fully understand. It's like the guy living in your house is like a super genius and you don't even really realize it. Yes, he was Kevin Trudeau even then. But I just didn't understand what I was seeing. I didn't understand the magic of all of the processes he went through, because a guy with a priority manager working behind a desk looks deceptively simple. It doesn't look like magic. the magic doesn't look like magic. It just looks like somebody working hard and being focused. Well, that is the magic. And I look forward to doing another one of these with Kevin again sometime and learning even more. I would strongly recommend to any of you reading this or listening to this, check out a one-on-one with Kevin Trudeau. They won't be available forever.
So there you have it. If you've watched this far into the video, I've had you for a pretty long time, so I'm going to let you go soon. I want to show you something, though. This, my friends, this big honkin' leather case, this is a priority manager. I made an appointment with myself to make this video for you guys today, which is what I have done. And it's with this system that I create everything, that I get through my day, that I make sure I don't miss anything, and that I keep my stress and anxiety at a minimum so that I feel good as I am accomplishing more and more. And there'll be more on this soon. It's not just energy, it's effectiveness. Lots to come. Interview series on the way. Tidbits and wisdom on the way. So stay tuned. I'll see you soon.